What's up, everybody? Welcome to Better Part 2 with Mims.
Welcome to Better, the podcast about doing better, being better, and leaving the world a better place than we found it.
Welcome back. This is part 2 with Mims. It's always interesting talking to people that have achieved success beyond the levels that most people can dream about, because it comes always with some kind of price. So that's what I really want to dig into with Mims. But before I do that, I always forget, betterpodcast.live. That is our website. Check it out. All kinds of new content on there now. All the YouTube shorts on there, the Spotify feed, the Apple feed, the YouTube feed. There's like text and pictures, and it's just going to keep growing from there. You can subscribe for our email list. You can pretty much everything. So betterpodcast.live. That's the website. No .com at the end, just betterpodcast.live. Okay, so Mims, what's up?
Yes, sir. Jay Hall, what's up, man? I'm back.
You are back.
Like I never left.
Yeah. I will tell you guys, Mims might be the most prompt hip-hop artist on the history of the planet. Usually, we do these episodes back to back. I'm not trying to front like it's on different days or anything. Like, we got dressed up in the same outfit and everything. But usually I'm like, where are you? When I'm getting to part 2, and you're like, oh, I went and got a sandwich, or something like that. So thank you for being so prompt.
No. Actually, what's funny is that before we started, I texted you. I said, hey, man, I got to jump in the room a little early just to make sure my audio is great. So I'm a stickler like that. Like, I like making sure that things are as they should be, yeah.
Man, I really would have liked to have known you when I was trying to produce hip hop, because to say that Tyler got distracted by things a lot would be an understatement. And Tyler, you know it. Okay, so the price you pay to do better is something I've explored with people on a couple episodes. But given that actually, before I do that, quickly name off all the places you can think of where you've traveled to music.
Ooh, that's a lot, man. I probably have to grab my passport. Let's say I've been to pretty much every continent, with the exception of Antarctica, maybe. So I mean, I don't
Really,
think
no
anyone's
Mims fans
traveling
on
there.
Antarctica? Really?
Yeah, I mean, North America, South America, Europe, Asia, Australia, Africa. Yeah, I mean, I've been to pretty much every continent at least. And then yeah, I mean, countries that I never thought I would go to and like understand the culture: Korea, the UAE, Saudi Arabia. Beirut is actually one of my favorite. Lebanon is one of my favorite places to go. Man, Brazil, obviously, all throughout America. Oddly enough, we talked about this, I think, at the show. I got my career started in Canada, in Toronto. I had a record called Love 'Em All that featured myself and an artist by the name of Choclair. And it was a record that was put out by the Baby Blue Sound Crew. And I'm gonna tell you, the producer on that record is a guy by the name of Dirty Swift, who also produced Many Men for 50 Cent, which indirectly I kind of had something to do with that. So,
cool.
So yeah, I mean, Canadians have been a part of my career since the early days. So I have to show a lot of love to, especially to Toronto, for what it showed me on the music side. So yeah, I mean, I've been a lot of places.
Yeah, it's there. For example, myself and my girlfriend, right? We talk about all the time about where we're going to go, and the next place will probably be like, well, I guess we're going to Yellowstone, which it's Yellowstone, and then going to Costa Rica probably for a Coldplay concert, and then
nice.
I may not be a kid, but apparently we're on a Disney World in January, and there's like, we want to go everywhere, right? So you, through your craft, went everywhere. Like you probably don't have too many places outside of the moon and maybe Mars that you want to see that you haven't seen yet. So what was the price to get that?
Yeah, I used to have this thing. One of my closest friends, he he started rapping with me early on in our career, I'd like to say. And we were supposed to be this tandem rap duo. And he went off to live the family life, and I kind of became the rap superstar. And you know whenever I would come home, and I'd bring him on the road with me sometimes, and obviously I'd come home, and having good friends around you to keep you grounded because they're doing what people consider normal people stuff, um, was always great to me. Like I always had a great time doing it, and I remember I don't know if this is probably like 2012, 2013, and I was like, damn, I spent most of my life chasing music, but I mean, he working on his family, was married, and I was like, man, I'm coming back and I feel like I'm starting from scratch. Like if I I mean, yes, it's amazing to go see the world, but you kind of miss out on that quote unquote normal people lifestyle. And I think the price I would say I had to pay was the years that I spent cultivating my career. Oddly enough, they're all a blur. Like a lot of it I don't even remember because it was so much so fast. Um, and the memories that I hold on to now, like I have a 4 year old, right? So I remember every single detail of the life that I'm living now, as opposed to what I lived then. And I think that that's probably the price you pay. Is that most people think that it's a lot of glitz and glamour, and it's I mean, away from the traveling, which by the way, traveling could be stressful as well. I mean, sometimes I remember flying to Nigeria, and it took me about 24, 25 hours in flight, um from plane to connection to plane to get there, and I was on ground for 10 hours and then another 24 hours back. I just did Australia, and I did Perth in Australia a few months ago, and one of the flights going was like 32 hours from New York, and then going back was 27, and I was only on ground for 24 hours. So like to spend 2 days of your
Cool.
life in the sky, literally in a plane, um, and only spend 1 day on ground. That's I think the price you have to pay to be able to rock some of those stages. Um, and then also for me, I didn't necessarily have it the greatest when I first started, right? Like when I first got my first royalty check and I saw how much money I made from my career, in the beginning, it was a blow to the chest. And I decided at that point, and a lot of people, there was a gap in my life where I wasn't visible for anyone. And people would say, man, what happened to Mims? And it's because at that point in life, like I decided to kind of like get out of the camera and get out of the public eye because I was already distraught about what I had made. So I think that there's a lot of things that occur, um, that have occurred in my life, that have shaped me into the person who I am today. But also, I would say wholeheartedly, it's not as easy as everybody thinks it is. Being in the public eye and living in under scrutiny, essentially. So yeah, there's a lot that you pay in that, and that's just small use cases that I'm mentioning. There's a lot more than that as well, for sure.
Yeah, it's I would imagine that not having privacy is a big piece of that price you pay, right? Like it's you know, I think about sometimes. I remember I was standing at, it was a little bit ago. We were about to go out to the lake, and I was standing at a checkout stand, and I'm looking at the magazines next to it, like the trash magazines,
Hmm.
and they had Brad Pitt and who was he? Who's he? He married somebody new, his like eighth marriage or something. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, what must it be like to not be able to do this? To not be able to just grocery shop and just be alone and just not have people coming up to you. That's got to be a weird feeling. And then you're traveling all over the world. You were probably on like a total burnout schedule, right? At that time. I mean, at some point in your career.
Yeah, 23-hour days at most. Sleeping like 15, 20 minutes here and there. And yeah, it's a lot. It takes a toll on you. It takes a toll on your body. It takes a toll on your mental health. Um, and this is not like a woe is me, because I speak to a lot of friends now, and I'm like, when I want to discuss like an inch of my problems, they're like, man, well, it's almost like the toxic positivity, right? Like, oh, well, it could always be worse. You could be me. And it's like, I get it. I don't want to put myself in someone else's shoes, but you don't know what it's like to have to travel and and be exhausted and still go to a different country where the time zone is 8 hours ahead or 8 hours behind or wherever. And yeah, it's a lot. It takes a lot on a person, and it takes a toll on their body. And I was just to say, like, there's a lot of celebrities, movie stars, musicians, athletes that turn to drugs, right? And I always used to wonder why. And a lot of it is probably based on the influence of the people around them. But the reality is that a lot of them turn to it to escape, like, the mental side of it, and mentally how uh, the business of music and the business of movies and things could treat a person, right? Because in some cases, you just as fast as you make it up there is just as fast as you kind of leave. And before you know it, you got a million cameras in your face, and then you turn around one day and no one cares, right? So, like, there's a lot that comes with it, psychologically, mentally, physically, that not everyone's cut out for it. And the reason why I know that, and I can say that wholeheartedly, when I would bring my friend on the road with me, after the first 2 days, he'd be begging for me to take him to fly him home. And he's like, man, I cannot do what you do. And it's a realization that for those watching, and it's funny because this is advice that I actually give artists. Like, are you sure you want to be a musician? Because there's many a times where, maybe not for me personally, but there's many a times where your salary is similar to that of someone who works at a fast food restaurant, if you're really pursuing it full time, right? So, like, from a monetary standpoint, you gotta love music that much to put yourself through that type of abuse to say, hey, I'm gonna try to survive this year on a $10,000 budget because that's all I made from my music career. And I think, and that's a lot for some people. Some people make
Yeah.
nothing. Some people are pouring money in. So yeah, I mean, it's not for the faint of heart. Um, when I see people who even have an ounce of success, that's why I like to do this, right? I like to be the person clapping. There are a lot of people who ridicule artists, and they say, well, they don't deserve to be there. That music is trash, and I make better music, but not realize that it's not just about the music. It's
Right.
about a lot more that comes with it. So yeah.
Yeah, I could see, a lot of people look at artists and say that's not hard work. Especially, a blue collar guy that's, going to a factory, stinking to high heaven after working for 12 hours, and a lot of guys will turn around and say, well, I mean, like,
Yeah.
really? You get to go rap around the world? Like, that's your big problem? But, you talk about mental health, and back, when you were touring the world all the time, mental health for men was not a subject that anybody really broached. So you probably were going through that pretty silently. And I'm guessing that sometimes even the drugs that come out of music might just be not even just a coping mechanism, but might be just a way to kind of claw back a little bit in your life, like go in the bathroom and just like have a moment, by yourself, and a little bit of control over the situation, and try to get, ironically, it's not going to do it, but try to get your mind right. And
Yeah.
so, like, how did you, sorry?
No, I'd have to imagine, when you talk about the artists that we know had a drug addiction, that, I mean, even just for example, like, I always say, when people assume you have more money than you do, right? Like, imagine what that feels like when you get a call, every 2 days saying, "Hey, can you loan me $20,000?" Like,
Oh,
I mean, once again, and I'm not. That's not a jab at any. I've never been in that position, at least not that many times in my life. I have been in that position, but I have to imagine some of the artists that do. Imagine how that feels when you have to turn people away, and then mentally you're like, "Damn, I just bought a new Ferrari, and I just bought a new mansion, and but my cousin or my whatever, my best friend can't pay their phone bill." Like I mean, it's a and most of the artists that I know come from poverty, right? Or at least
right.
most of them come from underserved scenarios. So that you're not talking about people who were born with silver spoons. So the level of responsibility that artists, musicians, athletes, movie stars, whatever, get compared to the amount of money they make is always scrutinized. But there's a reason why, some people are born for it, and some people, they get into the game, and they get addicted to the drugs, and they get addicted to the lifestyle, and and they succumb to it. So
Yeah, wow, I had a conversation with a friend one time. They're wealthy. They're, and she said something to me that I quote all the time. She said, your truck breaks down and it costs you $900. My plane breaks down and it costs me $90,000. It's just problems with more zeros, right?
absolutely.
And that's an interesting one that you tapped into, though, like, because people are always going to assume you had hits, you toured the world, you must be as rich as Elon Musk, right? So,
Yeah.
and to have to say to your cousin or a friend or something like, no, I can't lend you that money. Well, why not? You just bought yourself this stuff. Like, yeah, I just paid the toll to get the stuff that I have, and I don't have enough to give to everybody. I could see
Yeah.
why it would be, God, that would be a hard thing to reconcile, because you seem like a guy that wants to help everybody around him, and to have to say no, and then to go to bed that night, like, I'm a guy that goes to bed and lays there for 3 hours with his thoughts and goes, "Oh man,
Yeah.
I couldn't even
Yeah. I
imagine
mean,
what it feels like."
if what I would say is, if it came from one person, understandable. But I think what happens is, once again, when you're in a position, and I don't want to use myself as the use case, because I feel like I've always thought about this for other people as well. If I am new to the NBA, and I got a $30 million a year salary, I'm pretty sure it's not just one person coming to me saying, "Hey, can I borrow $50,000?" It's probably 15 people coming to you for that amount of money. And within reason, I'm sure you're going to help somebody out, right? Like, I'm sure, your mother, your father, brother, cousins, excuse me. But then when it comes to friends, you're like, okay, well, this is where the buck stops. And then,
Right.
you got to live with that mentally.
Yeah, like Ray J from elementary school calls you and it's like, "Hey, bro, what's up? Haven't seen you in 20 years. Can you lend me some cash?" Like, yeah, I mean, you got to draw a line somewhere, I'd
Yeah.
imagine. That's why they said, like, Mike Tyson and MC Hammer and like all these guys that end up going broke at some point. It's because they literally were just giving to everybody and they had no limits. So,
Yeah.
I guess you pick the price, right? The price you pay mentally. You give too much, you don't feel like you're giving enough, and no matter what, you're laying there at night going, "Oh man, I wish I could have done better on that." Um,
So
let's
I want to touch on something before we jump off that.
Sure, yeah.
My second album was titled Guilt, for that exact reason. And I'm going to tell you
Oh,
why.
interesting.
People
Okay,
don't realize this.
I'm gonna give
My
you the solo
career,
screen for this.
got it. My career took off circa 2006 into 2007. That's when I made the most money in my life as a newbie, as an artist. And the subprime era, the biggest recession that I lived through, and I think most of us have lived through, happened in 2008. That means people were losing their homes, they were losing their jobs, they were losing their investments. Um, and here I am, and I have a song that literally talks about all. It's called Guilt, which is the self-titled track on the album. And in that song, I'm explaining why I feel guilty because I just bought a brand new Range Rover and I just bought this big, 8,000 square foot home. And meanwhile, the rest of the world is like going through this recession. And yeah, I mean, that's one of the hardest things when you're a giving person. That's one of the hardest things that you have to do. So I don't know what it's like to be MC Hammer, and I don't know what it's like to be Mike Tyson, but I'd have to imagine that they value their relationships with people more than they value the amount of money they have in their bank account. Hence, why they've gotten themselves into financial situations trying to help everyone out. The issue is not helping people. The issue is how many of those people, after being helped, came back and stuck around and helped out, which is why I always tell people I admire two types of people. I admire the people who can walk away from something when it's up, and then I admire the people who don't walk away from something when it's down. And to me, that says a lot about people's character. There's very few people in my life, and I know now who they are because I went through that period in my life where I was completely up, and then I came crashing down, and I know who walked away and then I know who's still here to this day as a result of it. And that alone could affect somebody mentally. So
Well, they always say through struggle comes your greatest achievement, and I guess through struggle comes your greatest relationships. Because I could see how, I've had people, never to the level of what you have, but I ran nightclubs and everything. I ran busy club nights and everything, and I remember specifically people saying, "Oh man, I'll owe you, just get me in, just sneak me in that past that line, right?" And if I saw them today and I was on fire, I don't know if they would buy water to put it out, right? And it's like it's so hard. I think the hardest part for me of this podcast is really, like I said, it's therapy, right? And it's about trying to just figure out a better way forward. But the people aspect of that is the hardest for me because I don't want to be the person that says people are inherently not great. But my experience has been more people have been not great than great, right? I think I have from the literal hundreds of thousands of people that used to come to my parties, I think maybe 20 of them are still around, if that, and so you try to think about, okay, at the time, it was a lot of fun and we're bouncing favors off each other to get where we wanted to go and all that sort of thing. But then when it comes down to the people are there for you when you do that drop, when you're not necessarily at rock bottom, but where you take a slide from where you were at. Let's say you were doing something awesome and you had to quit it. That to reconcile the fact that people aren't there who you were there for, that's a really hard thing to compute. It's a really hard thing to be positive after.
Yeah.
At that level, like it's interesting you did where you put it out there about having guilt about it not be about people having and then or you having and then people not having. I was living in the States when that recession hit, and that was 2008, so that was the year Barack Obama was elected. I was working on the campaign, and something I remember very distinctly about him, which gave me faith back in politics, was he wanted his aides to go out to the 100,000 people in those stadiums and find him people that were deeply affected by the recession, but that were in a unique position where he could help them in the smallest way, right? But because it wasn't necessarily, he wasn't going to give money to everybody at all of his rallies, right? That would have been insane. But where he could, say he could, I saw him sit down with this guy who was having a veteran who was having a really hard time finding a job, and he got laid off from his line and everything, and you got Barack Obama sitting there making phone calls, and he got the guy a job.
Yeah.
And it's like, I every time I get really negative about that, if my girlfriend's not the one or my mom's not the one telling me like snap out of it, I think of those types of stories. And it's really cool when someone can take, because I'm sure Obama had a lot of people that were there in 2008 that aren't there today, right?
Yeah.
But he's still, I talk to people that know him very well and spend time with him. He's still that guy. And I think that's character.
Once again, I think it's something that's in you, right? I mean, you talk about Barack. We could say the same about Mike Tyson. I mean, I'm gonna go on my assumption that when you have a good heart, you have a good heart, and most people pose as people with good hearts, but they're just opportunists, and those are the ones that usually disappear when there's no opportunity for them to take advantage of. However, the ones who wholeheartedly care, they usually stick around to the bitter end, and that's as well as that's a great quality, but also can be very dangerous if you have the wrong people around you, and you could end up being in a position. I always tell people, like, who helps the person who helps everyone, right? Because if the person who has $100 million is the one financing everyone's life, and then they fall, then the whole scenario is wiped out, right? Because you can't help the person at the top of that chain. So yeah, I mean, listen, I know we started off the conversation about a scenario where to me, I feel like there's a lot that comes with being in the spotlight that I didn't particularly like, and I still don't like. Which, by the way, that's why I'm not social media driven. That's why I'm not. Let me jump in front of every single camera that's out there. And honestly, here's the truth: when we spoke in the suite, and you told me about the purpose of your show and how you want to leave a positive message and impact on people, I was already on it. Like, yo, let's do it, because I think that in most cases there's not a lot of people like you, right? There's not a lot of people that are looking to actually help people. There's a lot that are looking to take advantage. There are a lot of people that are looking for opportunity, but there's not a lot of people who wholeheartedly want to help. And I go back to what I told you on the last episode. I think when you can change one person's life, even if it's them going to get themselves checked out, brother, I'm telling you now, your success. And you mentioned it a couple times. Like, I've never reached the type of success as you, meaning me. No, I'd like to beg to differ. I think that success is subjective, and what you've been able to do exceeds what in my mind what you may deem as successful, but it is. You're helping people out. You're giving people advice. You're creating a platform that someone can go and listen to, and get something of value to take away. So, man, I just want to give you your props for that, because that's a big deal, and there's not a lot of people out here that are trying to do that. So yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, you know what? It's kind of funny. I identified as an entrepreneur my whole life, right? I've been from like hawking hockey cards at school, and all the way up to running a ticketing outlet. I've always identified as an entrepreneur, and I exited out of my company this year. And everybody asked me like, "Oh, what are you doing now?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm writing, I'm podcasting, and just kind of, it almost felt a little frivolous saying it. And then I was thinking, this is so weird. I was thinking about this morning, actually. I'm using a balder on my head, and I'm kind of just, it's like a 15-minute process. So it's just me and my thoughts and my balder, my buzzing in my head. And I was thinking, man, like what is it that I'm doing? Like, I don't really, if I had to identify it. And I was thinking, I'm a writer. I'm writing a book. It's based on the 3 weeks to a month before, between meeting my girlfriend and us going on our first date. And as I was writing that book, I'm asking myself the same thing. Like, what am I doing? What is the point to this? Right. And then today I was like, you know what? The point, I think, for me is we didn't have a lot growing up. My parents did everything they could. But my parents, like, you don't see it as a kid, but you think about it, you're like, man, my dad worked like 8 jobs, I was telling this story to Shauna the other day, was it yesterday, about my mom would go work at a toy store around Christmas time. So then on Christmas Eve, when the toy store shut down, she got all these wicked deals on toys. So I had a mountain of toys on Christmas Day. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that example has made it so that I don't feel whole unless I'm doing something that, like, not necessarily is helping, but just putting a little bit of a different vibe out there than what is currently out there. Because, man, is it hard to find positivity in media these days. It's
ridiculous. It's crazy. It's almost like it's almost like we're purposely fed the negativity and nepotism because they want our energy and mind to shift. Hence the reason why I don't listen to certain types of music, because I don't want anything. And I use the word chakra. I don't want to sound like I'm like in a yogi or whatever they call those people. But the reality is that like when you operate on a different vibration and your life is on a different vibration, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have a quote unquote plan. You just have to operate on a positive vibration, and everything else just follows. And that doesn't mean that you get everything you want. That just means that everything you get, you value and appreciate. And it's a different way of thinking. So when you say to me, you don't know what it is you're doing, what it makes me think of is exactly what I was doing when I was creating music back then, when I didn't have an end goal. It wasn't about being the number one artist in the country. It was just about literally going in a studio and making a song that I thought my friends would appreciate, because we were all joking and laughing. And it turned into a career that I didn't necessarily ask for, but I worked my ass off for. Right. So
yeah.
So the podcast is a revelation of the same thing. Like, you don't have an end goal, but you're just going to work your ass off to make sure that the visibility is there, so that when it does resonate with people, those dots connect. And before you know it, and I'm not trying to operate on what the future holds, but let's just say next minute, you have, a primetime show, but that you didn't ask for, but you got it because you're operating on a positive vibration. So, yeah, I mean, I hate to get all spiritual on you, but I think that's why I say, when people ask me certain questions, I don't necessarily like to give these blueprinted answers. Like, yeah, you need to go out and do this and this and this and this. I think it's a matter of how you feel, a matter of what resonates with you, and ultimately how you connect the dots. And can I put this in story form just for 2 seconds? This is going to be like a 5-minute story, or not even 5 minutes. I'm going to condense it.
Rock on.
One of the most toughest times in my life, it goes back to 2014, and I'll tell you the scenario. Basically, I had 3 cars that were stolen from me that year, about $500,000 in cars. And when I say that story, it's a weird one. People mostly ask how. Well, I put 3 cars up for consignment for sale at a dealership. The dealer basically took the cars, shipped them out the country, and then he fled. True story. So I was $500,000 in car debt in 2014. I also lost my 7-year litigation case against my record label at the time, and I was living in one of the most lavish areas in New Jersey, in Edgewater, overlooking the water. I had an apartment overlooking the whole New York City skyline, and I was paying an astronomical amount of money for that. And I remember going through this scenario, and I'm like, yo, like, this is basically single-handedly almost flattened me out financially. And there was about a day or two where I was depressed, right? Or where I was like in my feelings and in my mood. And, ultimately I had to snap out of it because I realized that if I was able to wake up the next day and hit the reset button, I was given an opportunity that most people that day wouldn't have gotten because they didn't wake up. Um, and ever since then, I've tried to operate on a higher vibration to where I've never made anything I do about money anymore. Um, and oddly enough, it's weird because that also affected how I was doing music. Because remember, music for me came from a place of partying, going out, hanging out, braggadocious music about how much money is in my bank account and all this other stuff. And I no longer could write those kind of records. So ultimately, like I basically essentially ended my career as a musician in order to have this new way of thinking. Um, and it took a little while, but 1 month goes by, you know, I get a call, opportunity comes in. When I stop thinking about where the money's coming from, an opportunity comes in. 2 months go by, another one comes in, and then before you know it, I'm filled with abundance, and my bank account looks great, and life is great, and only because I stopped worrying about the one thing that I was worried about in the first place. And once again, I say that this is not going to resonate with a lot of people, but success is subjective. Money is something that a lot of people don't have the ability to manage. So when you ask for money, be careful what you're asking for, because you may think that that's the solvent of every single problem you have until you have it, and you got 1,000. What do they say? More money, more problems. Until you got 1,000,000 more problems at your hand, or your problems just become bigger. So yeah, I'd rather operate on a higher vibration, not have to worry about where I'm financially headed, but just keep my spirits in a positive place, and just whatever the universe wills and brings my way, I'm cool with it. I'm happy about it.
Well, it's crazy because I was just about to ask you for a better moment, and I think you just dropped it on us. Wow.
Life changing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to a smaller degree, I've been in situations where I'm like, oh my god, like the bottom feels like it fell out, and the ability to move past that and to get into a headspace so that you can so you can process it, and then the abundance comes back at you. I mean, not to get too Mims Gandhi and
Yeah.
all this, but
Right.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I there's so many people I know that the abundance would never come back to them because they have operated at that negative frequency for so long.
And they're chasing it, right? They're
Yeah,
chasing.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Usually they're chasing it. And I mean, there's one thing to want something badly. I get that part, right? And there's the anxiety that comes with it. But then there's another thing to um unorganically chase something and not allowing it to kind of meet you or come to you, in essence. So yeah, I mean, that's cardinal sin in my opinion. Like I don't want to chase anything um other than high vibration and good life. When you guys were hanging out in the suite and your energy was, having a great time, it resonated with me. Therefore, I stuck around and I had a great time with you guys. So much so that I missed most of the show hanging out with you guys because the energy was there. So yeah, I mean, I don't, and then also I'm not competing with anyone. Like I'm not. There's nothing to compete with. Before it was I need the best car, I need the biggest home, I need I need to, I don't know, whatever it was. It's like it's always something that was above what I was competing for, and then I had to achieve it, and then you get it, and you're like, damn, this is what it is. All right, cool. Um, yeah. So I hope I'm not speaking conf- too confusing for the audience and for you guys out there that are listening. but what I'm talking about is not. It's a feeling. It's not. It's just a feeling. That's it. The
Yeah.
vibration.
No, I don't, and because I do guest episodes and I do solo episodes, right? Where I'm just kind of talking about my journey. And I've said several times that right now is one of the happiest points of my life, even though I just went through hell for the first part of this year. And it's because I have right now the ability to focus in on things that I'm really passionate about, that I like doing, that I actually like doing, which is so many people. I know people I grew up with, and I see them, I'll see them out at a mall or something. I'll say, "Oh, what are you up to?" And they're like, "Hating life." That's their answer. Hating life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, am I lucky that right now, I'm not a millionaire or anything, but I have so much abundance. I've got a beautiful girlfriend. I've got my mom she's into semi-remission in cancer. My relationship with my dad's the best it's been in a long time. I'm doing this, I'm writing, all the, traveling, doing things that I really love to do. And I honestly believe that the person I was, and again, my girlfriend busts me over this, because I say the person I was before I went on this journey didn't deserve this stuff, didn't deserve this opportunity that I have in my life right now. And when I consciously shifted, like you did, when the cars got stolen and all that, you consciously shifted, and then it's almost like the universe rewarded you for that shift. And I feel the exact same way about my life right now. So it's kind of cool to hear somebody else that's been through it, because sometimes you go, am I just making this stuff up in my head?
And I was just gonna say, somebody out there right now is listening, and what they're gonna do is they're gonna unorganically try to change their perception on something, and it's not gonna be organic. And what's gonna happen is it's not gonna work, and then they're gonna come back to us and say, "Hey, I tried it, but it doesn't work." And what I'm saying to people out there is that there's a difference between accepting the energy and letting the universe bring it to you, as opposed to just pretending like you accept the energy and then waiting for the universe to bring you something. I don't feel like I'm entitled to anything in life other than the happiness that I live in, right? And making the best of the situation. We're not talking about toxic positivity, right? That's different, right?
Yeah, for
Toxic
sure.
positivity is when you feel like crap one day, but you keep a smile on your face, and because you're afraid to tell people that you don't feel great. I think this is different. This is, I don't expect anything from anyone. Therefore, whatever comes, because I'm not expecting it, is considered abundance to me. My goal in life now, and yeah, we have our moments where we go to sleep, like you said, and I'm in Dort for 3 hours. We spoke before last week. A friend of mine passed away the day that I was at the show, suddenly, and all I could think about was his children that he leaves behind. And for me, those are the moments where I'm like, okay, I have a 4-year-old, so you start to have some correlations. So yeah, this is not necessarily about just always being happy. It's more or less just accepting what the universe brings you, and considering that in abundance. And man, like whether you're a musician, actor, uh, philanthropist, entrepreneur, whatever it is that you're in, and whatever motivates you. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is something you should pay attention to, especially if things in your life aren't necessarily what you want them to be. So,
Yeah, I did an episode where I was talking about, I'm a nerd, so I related it to Superman, Clark Kent, and Lex Luthor, but where there's a point. TV show Smallville was a big impact, had a big impact on me when I was a kid, and there was these points. So Clark and Lex both had this one point in their life, and they made choices, and the choice was to go into the light or to go into the darkness, and to do good things, or to take advantage of people. And eventually what ended up happening was, Clark becomes Superman, and Lex becomes the most evil ruler in the history of the world, right? And well, that's an extreme case, the way I was dealing with things is I said, you know, I looked at what I felt like my skill set was. You know, I've always been able to just be in front of a camera and be in front of a microphone and talk. I've always liked, whether I'm a good writer or not, I guess we're about to find out. But you know, I enjoy world building and crafting characters and all that. And but that stuff all came as a result of not, like you said, not pursuing it. More, it just kind of happened, right? So when I did get when I got out of my company, I was like, well, what do I do next? And it was like the answer just came to me as a result of the fact that these were all my experiences. And if I keep moving in this direction of trying to be as positive as possible, and I have my days, of course, we all do, like you said, that it all just kind of it's almost like somebody's wrapping a present and I'm at the bow stage, you know, and they're about to tie it, but you know, it's you know, but the universe throws stuff at you, and you go, you either embrace it or you try to force some other kind of life, and I think that's where most people make the biggest mistake is the universe is telling them something. It's like punching them in the face, you know, saying do this thing. And you're like, nah, no, I'm gonna do this, you know. And I think that's a big problem. But if you can get past that, if you can see those cues, people call it instinct, people call it you know, whatever it is, God talking to them, the universe, whatever. But if you can see it, you can embrace it. You can end up with, you know, touring the world, and you know, because like you went in the studio to make songs for you and your friends to party to. But you did it because you knew you could go you felt good going into the studio making music that you and your friends could party to, right? And
absolutely,
it's just kind of cool. Like you could have been pulled into, maybe like there was people in your life that could have been pulling you in the direction of, you know, trying to make movies and stuff, and you're like, oh, it sounds cool, I don't really know what I'm doing, and then you could have your whole life could have been in the pursuit of that did not come naturally to you. But you heard the cues, you took the cues, and you end up with massive success. And that's just a super cool thing. And
I mean, that's what it is. You ever do something, you ever go somewhere you wasn't expecting to go, and then you end up having the time of your life, and then you ever go somewhere that you were anticipating going, and then you end up having the worst time of your life. And I think that's what we're talking about here, right? It's you know, our expectations, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have any. I mean, you know, I'm not saying you shouldn't have any. Obviously, you know, you definitely have to work toward your dream and what you want. But in the end of it all, like most of the greatest things that I've experienced in my life have come from unexpected moments. Whereas on the other hand, some of the things that I chased the hardest and wanted to achieve the most, when I got there, it wasn't as rewarding as I thought it would be. You know, and you know, the number one thing people say to me is, man, you could say this because you've been through it. You know, you can talk about how much, you know, I used to tell people like money isn't the goal, it's a tool, right? And they'd be like, well, it's easy for you to say because you make money. And sometimes you have to like sit back and be like, like is that the truth? Like am I just saying that because of the position I'm in? But then sometimes you realize that no, because there'll be days when I wake up and I'm like, man, I need to make a certain amount of money. And it's a thought in my mind. And then I go about my day. And then before you know it, I get a call and it's for the exact same amount of money that I was looking to make. And that doesn't come from me getting on the phone saying, hey, I need to call every single, you know, person in the world that I can see. I mean, yes, don't get me wrong. Perseverance, like you know, in order to be successful in life, depending on what you deem as success, there's nothing wrong with having perseverance to just keep pushing. But a lot of the stuff that you enjoy, a lot of the stuff that you're gonna enjoy is gonna come from the moments that you least expected, from the trips that you didn't want to take. I didn't want to go to Alaska. You know, I did Alaska New Year's, and the day that I woke up, it was the day before New Year's, and I didn't want to go to Alaska. I'm like, Dad, I got to get on this plane for 12 hours. And I got on the plane, and you know, before you know it, it was like an amazing audience, amazing crowd, amazing club night, and I've been to a state that I never thought that I would even ever visit. And, you know, so
It's a
yeah, I mean, a
beautiful
lot of
state,
things in life come from what you least expect.
an absolutely beautiful state too. Um,
And Winnipeg, by the way, shout out to Winnipeg. I had an amazing time in Winnipeg.
well, it's funny. So the two things you said that I relate to. So the first is, you know, when people are like, well, it's easy for you to say because you had money. I've always found that interesting because, you know, I'm a big listen to the experts guy, right? You know, if I don't take my car to a dentist to get an oil change, right? You know, I take my car to a mechanic, I go get my teeth fixed at the dentist. So if somebody has been through it, you know, and understands what it's like to be there and can offer insight from that, I wouldn't be like, well, it's just because you had money, you know, that's why you can say that. I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. You've been there. Oh, you can't hear me? Uh-oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, now you're back on. Sorry, the audio just went completely out.
You
Sorry
know what?
about that.
I blame Tim Cook. I bet you it's your AirPods. I bet you they connected to your watch or somebody's car or something.
I think that's someone called my phone, and then I think my AirPods just went away. Like,
yeah.
Apple, come on, fix that, Apple.
Yeah, no doubt, Tim Cook. So I was just saying that, you know, if you were to come to me, like, let's say I was on Mad Pursuit of Money, right? And you were to come to me and say, well, hang on, like, let me explain to you my experience I had with that. I wouldn't be like, oh, you're just saying this because you had money and you have the luxury of saying it. I'd be like, oh, that's interesting because you did it. And now you're giving me kind of insight if I were to do it. So I'm a big believer in listening. You know, that's why I think, you know, I'm going to do a podcast about ageism that came out as a result of this Joe Biden thing. Oh, did you lose me again? You got me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. And, you know, I'm going to do a big thing about ageism because, like, people discard people as they get older. You know, you get less valuable the older you get for the most part, but it should be the exact opposite. Because your life experiences that you've had as a hip hop artist that's traveled the world and had hit singles and done all this stuff should be part of, hey, I want to be a hip hop artist, to like the kid that's 16. Let me tell you some things that I learned along the way, right? But we seem to discard knowledge and experience, and we just want to do it ourselves. We don't want the rule book to apply to us, and we think we're going to be, you know, and maybe we will blaze our path in a different way. But there are certain things that you got, you know, at least you could hear the story and be like, I'm going to watch out for that, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
You know, yeah, and yeah, and then the other thing I was going to say is it's really interesting because I wasn't going to go to Tacos and Tequila originally. I was like, I was going back and forth on it, and then we went out to the cabin, and Shauna's friend Jen was like losing her mind over Chingy. I mean, she was like, find tickets. Oh my God. She's dancing on the deck for like an hour about to like all those hip hop songs from back in the day, you and Camille, like all that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So then I started making phone calls. I'm like, oh, I got to find some tickets. And then it came up that you know, the suite and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Go end up in the suite. You're there. We're doing this podcast. This podcast will undoubtedly help a couple people along the way. And it's just so interesting how, yeah, you're like, I don't want to go to Alaska, be at the time of your life. And I didn't want to go to the show. It's that we had other plans and I wasn't planning on going. And then I end up having, you know, all these different things came out of it. So you're absolutely right. You know, and what you said,
those are the scenarios.
Yeah.
And I think if you're smart, you learn from the experiences of others so that you can navigate your own experiences. I'm a big fan of, I don't want to hit my head, right? Now, that doesn't mean I won't hit my head, but if I'm going to hit my head, it's going to be on something that I've never had anyone who was able to help me navigate through. But if someone can help me navigate through something by their experiences, especially if they're experiencing something, I'm gonna watch that with a magnifying glass, as well as take the journey into my own hands. So it's a combination of both, right? You want to make sure that you're not handicapping yourself based on someone else's experiences, but you're also aware of some of the things that would happen. If I knew half the stuff now, and we always say that, right? If I knew now if I knew back then what I know now, I'd be twice as successful. And it's the truth. It's like, the world has a way of giving us these subtle like reminders of what life really is. And for those watching, once again, unless your life has ended today, the reality is that if you get the opportunity to wake up tomorrow, that opportunity puts you in a better position than the person who didn't get that opportunity, right? So, and I hold that close to me, because what it tells me is that I don't have limitations. I don't have anything that'll slow me down. And that was another thing about being a successful musician, is you have to convince the mind that that's what you intend to be, or that's what you are. You have to will it. Like, that has to be something you will and you understand. And I have to imagine, if I'm going to play basketball, I don't want to be, if I'm in the NBA, like my mind would tell me I don't want to be the next LeBron James, because the next LeBron James wouldn't be LeBron James if he was thinking I want to be the next Michael Jordan. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I get the comparisons in life and things, but in order for you to achieve greatness, your mind has to tell you that I'm bigger than what came before, but you also have to learn. I'm assuming that LeBron James probably studied the hell out of Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and all of these guys to become who he's become. And I don't want to be a part of the conversation who's better, LeBron or Michael, because we'll be here for another 5 hours explaining that. But the reality is that the guys who go down in history, the guys who go down as iconic, they take what their elders or the people before them went through, their trials and tribulations. They learn from it, and then they keep carrying the torch to move on to better. Without MC Hammer blowing $30 million on his friends and family, it wouldn't have taught an artist like me not to do that, So I mean, and I mean that with the most respect to a person like MC Hammer, because this is a person who re-engineered the sound of music during the 90s for all of us. So I mean,
dude,
yeah.
I remember back in the day, my white as ghost parents and their friends doing the Running Man to "You Can't Touch This." Like, it's, yeah, he brought, he is him, Will Smith, and probably Snoop would be, in that order. Probably Will Smith, then MC Hammer, because Will Smith got the Grammy before MC Hammer. I would say them in order. It just made took hip hop from the level it was at and just catapulted it. I mean, it was wild to watch. I remember thinking as a kid, I'm like, wait, why are my parents listening to this is weird. Why are my parents listening to hip hop? This is so strange. And my mom's, one of her favorite artists is LL Cool J. Like, I was
just gonna say, yeah,
LL another one, right? And I mean the stain, like that, dude. Art of War and like everything that he comes out with, it's still pops. And I could go. Let's not get into a conversation about hip hop, because that'll go on forever.
We have to save that for the next
time. The next time for sure. What is to end this off, because I want, I said 2 30-minute episodes, and we got one that's a full hour here. What was your favorite song you recorded?
without me trying to be biased, the obvious answer to that would be This Is Why I'm Hot, just based on what it's done for my life and career. But I also think it depends on my mood. I have a song called One Last Kiss that is on, I want to say, the Guilt album. And it was a song I dedicated to my mom. And the reason why I love that record is because, you know, that's the one that I get the calls, the unexpected calls or DMs or messages about saying, hey, you don't realize how much the song has kind of helped me overcome difficult times. And, you know, to say the least, it's weird because I don't even listen to my older music. Like, I don't listen to my songs. I don't go back and like listen to the messaging. And whenever someone comes to me, whether it be that song or whatever song that they're talking about, I go back and I listen to the lyrics a little bit differently. And it's funny because I wrote them, right? So like, you would think that I know them, but then I got to go back and listen and be like, well, dag, where was my energy at when I said this? And how did people perceive it? I know most people know me for This Is Why I'm Hot. And a lot of people only know me for This Is Why I'm Hot. You know, so I get that part. But then I think that people get surprised when I say, hey, go listen to the album. Nowadays, you can listen to it for free. If you have a streaming app, just go listen, right? Just listen to some of the things that I did, because 95% of the music I made, or even 98% of it, is not even in the same category as This Is Why I'm Hot as a record.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
You know, so yeah. So I mean, to be honest, I would say for me, it's gonna be Guilt, which is the title track, One Last Kiss, Where I Belong, and there's a couple more that are different for me. But as long as I do a record that someone can hit me up and say, hey, you don't know those exact words, you don't know how much this record meant to me during my most difficult times. To me, I don't care what song it is. It could be a song about, you know, shaved ice. I'm like, I'm happy I made it, because that's what you make music for.
Right. Yeah, no, that's cool. If I had to pick, so we growing up, my uncle would, you know, cut the kegger in half, turn it into a barbecue, make ribs and cornbread and chitlins and grits and all that stuff, right? And I grew up on that stuff. And then later on, after, you know, your music started coming out in that era, I had a friend who his dad did that stuff, right? So I'd go over to the barbecues, and his cousin was always in charge of the music, no matter what. I mean, you couldn't get close to it. Just this big guy that sat with the boombox on his stomach, you know. And his favorite song of yours, which ended up becoming my favorite song because he played it 7 times at every barbecue, was "It's All Right." So like the second I hear it, it just a flood of memories come back, you know, to a really cool time. Like those backyard barbecues are like, anybody that's listening to this right now, if you've never gotten your friends and family of every age together just to have a cookout, do it. It's such a cool time. It's just like it'll always make memories.
And by the way, that's what music is. That music is basically a when you capture a moment, and you can remember exactly what you were doing when you listened to a song. That's what music is to me. And we have hundreds, if not thousands, of songs in our memory that get embedded in us that can remind us of specific events. So that's so dope, man. I'm appreciative of that, and that was an unexpected record. And I think that was a Ray Charles sample, and his estate didn't clear a lot of samples, and they did clear that one for us. And I used to perform that as my opening song. I don't even think I remember the lyrics, but guess what? I guarantee you, I'm going back now. I'm going to listen to that song a good 7 or 8 times for sure.
For sure. Yeah, I'll throw it on so Shauna can hear it too right after this.
There you go.
All right, man.
Shout out to Shauna. Thank you for the energy as well. You guys were amazing. You know, I appreciate the energy both you guys gave me at the in the suite, and to your friends as well, for sure.
Yeah, man. Thank you. I mean, it's so cool to hang out with you for like an hour and a half and just, you know, talk about life and everything. And yeah, I mean, it's I know she's been sitting here. This is the first. I will let you know this is the first podcast she's come and sat in the studio for. So,
Nice.
usually she's listening to them after the fact, but yeah, she's here. Nice. She's here listening to us talk, and I've seen her every so often just leaning into the conversation, So, very cool.
We got to get her on next time, and really have that trifecta of a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be doing a podcast shortly. We're coming up on our 1 year together, and people asked if we would do a podcast together where we talk about our relationship and everything, how we did things better than our previous relationships and all that. But yeah, let's do it again, and let's bring her on for sure. That'd be awesome. So yeah, I guess let's taken up an hour and a half of your life here. So, and I'm sure you got a singing kid you got to attend to. So I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your stories with us, man. I know, like I said, that there's every episode, there's always a few people that are like, oh man, that really, that got me. And I think this is definitely gonna be one of those.
Yeah. And I invite people, sometimes these conversations are better had one-on-one. So like anybody out there that has any questions, man, I try to be as personable as possible. So please hit me up. I'm not much of a social media person, but when I do see a DM pop up that I take a lot more seriously, I'm always down to chop it up and just give my perspective and listen to other people's perspective on life as well. So yeah, thank you, Jay, for giving me this platform.
No problem. And my caveat to that is, every rapper that's listening to this right now, you know who you are. That doesn't mean hit him up for a feature on your track.
Yeah, well, I would hope that. Well, that's another conversation. But yes, hit me up for some advice on the business and how to navigate. And the music, once again, if it's there, maybe, if it's there, then I consider it. I do have a setup back here, so I'm but yeah, that doesn't mean that I'm going to do a feature for everybody.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. You have a great evening, and we'll connect soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, and Shauna. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. Enjoy the rest of the night, evening.
For sure. You too, man. Later.
Thanks for checking out Better. If you got to the end, it must mean you liked the episode, right? So how about 5 stars, maybe a sub, maybe a share? Great universal comment points. And good luck on your better journey.